Let's take a nice big breath. You in Zoom land, please, as we resume our regularly scheduled programming. We had a little glitch there. So let's all do a silent round of applause for Clyde, even though, well, between us, Clyde admitted, he goes, I don't know what I did. He fixed it, but he doesn't know what he did. So yeah, anyway, here we are. Welcome, welcome. Glad to have you in Zoom land. And thank you so much, Larry. You did a beautiful job backing up the situation. Okay, so I'm Debbie George, many of you know, and happy to see you. I'm one of the Dharma leaders. And tonight, we're going to get to know a condition that visits our mind frequently. Okay, we're going to learn more about it in hopes that we will recognize it more easily. Okay, and then we're going to look at some techniques that we can use to address it. Okay. Ooh, what is it? Ooh. Okay, so I'm glad you're all sitting down because I need to tell you that we all are afflicted. We have an affliction, and that is delusion. I'm sorry to be the bearer of news, but you're all deluded and you're ignorant. I mean, those are just the two words used in the Buddhist text. But I'm going to unpack those words so you won't feel so bad about it. You're not alone. So the thing is, we don't see things clearly. We don't see them as they are. And that's why it's because of delusion. Again, it's also called ignorance. You know it very well. You may not know you know it, but you know it very well. So we don't see things clearly because of the screen. There's a filter made of our views and our opinions and our unexamined assumptions that we've been living with through our lives that are our particular kind of screen. And it's almost like we're walking Facebook algorithms. You know, like when you like something or you don't like something, that becomes part of your like seeking, it will seek you out. It's part of what you get shown and how you see things. So I know it's not good news, but it'll be good news once we get to know better. So I think of this as one of the three musketeers. So it's greed, hatred, and delusion, sometimes called lust, aversion, and ignorance. Usually it's greed, hatred, and delusion. So there are three defilements that visit us. And they bring out the worst in us, I have to say, on an individual level and a group level. I mean, whole nations and large groups, think of QAnon, think of, so these three defilements, they visit our mind. They're not our nature. Our deepest nature is pure and luminous and bright. And these occlude that luminous nature. They visit our minds. Greed and hatred are not hard to see when they arise in us, especially hatred, right? You can be aware when that's in you. You can feel it in your body. Greed's straightforward. It's that leaning forward energy, that energy of wanting, lust, desire for pleasure. Hatred is straightforward. It's that disgust, aversion, jealousy, revulsion. But delusion is hard to see. So it's all mental. We identify with the stories of our mind. And it's hard to step back and be an observer. and just witness, be objective. So this is what's his name? Goldstein, Joseph Goldstein. He quotes the Buddha in his book, Insight Meditation. So the Buddha, the mind is radiant, shining, glowing forth, but it is stained by the defilement that visited. The mind is radiant, shining, glowing forth, and from the uprooting of the defilements that visit it, it is freed. And again, from Joseph Goldstein, he says, quote, one of my teachers voiced what I think is true for all traditions, practices, techniques, and views. He said, quote, unless a practice cools the fires of greed, aversion, and ignorance, it's worthless. This is the measure of everything we do. Unless our practice cools these fires, it's worthless. So tonight we're going to get to know delusion and hopefully recognize it more easily. And then we'll again look at some techniques on how to meet it. So getting to know delusion, it's part of being human. So luckily, so is wising up. Wising up is part of being human. When we're visited by delusion, it's very simple. We're lost in thought. Okay? We're in la la land. We might look at our plate of food and see that it's gone and not remember we ate it. We might be driving somewhere and we're like, I barely remember getting here. We're so lost in thought. It is the root cause of suffering. Okay? Not seeing things as they are, we crave for how we think they should be. As our suffering grows, we feel more isolated and delusion grows. Feeling overwhelmed is a sign that you've been overtaken by some, storyline. Ajahn Chah, we love to quote Ajahn Chah. He said, it's like we're riding a horse and asking, where's the horse? That's delusion. How do we find the horse? Stay tuned. So delusion also fuels greed and hatred with justification. Like, if I can just get that, I'll be happy. Okay, and then there's a story. Hatred. I'm justified here because this individual, this group are evil and they deserve my hatred. It's, we justify. In fact, greed and hatred hurt us. Okay, it's like a poison that we're filled with. It charges our nervous system, it raises our blood pressure, increases our heart rate. It brings us suffering. So with the support of delusion, they can get very strong, greed and hatred. Jack Kornfield, delusion misunderstands the world and forgets who we are. Delusion gives rise to all unhealthy states. Free yourself from delusion and seek with wisdom. Jack describes 3 levels of delusion in our lives in his book, The Wise Heart. It's a guide to the universal teachings of Buddhist psychology. And I just want to pull it out because it's such an incredible book. And I just want you guys to see. Okay? He compares Western psychology and Buddhist psychology in everyday situations. It's really great. So he talks about three levels of delusion. The first one, it's simple inattention. It's lack of attention. So forgetful delusion, when we're lost, again, we're lost in thought. We're half asleep, we're on automatic pilot. That's how we could get to where we're going and not realize that we drove there. The second is the delusion of denial. This is deeper than the first, okay? We don't believe what's actually in front of us, in front of our eyes. It can get us, love affairs, gambling, risk-taking behaviors, hiding painful secrets as if denying them will make our problems go away. So this is kind of, I'm paraphrasing Jack. And now this other example, he talks about an extraordinary lifting of denial occurred in the Soviet Union in the 1980s when Gorbachev took power, and he wanted to bring things back to light and more openness. And so previously the Russian communist dictatorships denied all the wrongdoing. In the history books, they even pretended that tens of millions killed in Stalin's purges didn't happen. And all these horrible things, even photographs were doctored to remove traces of all the officials who had been eliminated, okay? In 1988, under Gorbachev, in the national newspaper headlines, it reported that the Soviet government had decided to cancel the final history exams for 53 million students because the history textbook taught lies that, quote, diluted one generation after another. So this is a huge example of delusion and people under the influence of it. Propaganda delusion. The third is misperception of reality. And this is how we run around pretending we're not going to die someday, and we forget we're going to die, or we're denying it, and that we're subject to illness and aging, and that we take ourself to be a solid, permanent, like entity, looking like it's a constant in here, looking out, eyes that see things changing, but it's not changing. So that's a big Dharma talk that I'm not going to give right now, but that is a huge part of the misperception of reality. So delusion has us constantly chasing what we think will bring us happiness, reaching for pleasure and avoiding pain like a rat on a wheel, instead of developing wisdom. Wisdom is the antidote to delusion, okay? To meet life's inevitable pain with less suffering. Jack Kornfield, he quote, delusion is different from, for example, not knowing how a gas engine works. It can lead us to ignore the facts and cling to our views and opinions. It creates a loss of connection with reality. That's a danger. We don't see, this is one of my favorite quotes of all time. It's from the Talmud. And it's, we don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. This means if we're full of fear, hatred, anger, jealousy, this is the screen we'll see the world through. And the opposite's true. If we're full of loving kindness, compassion, if we've cultivated these states, we'll see that. So if we see really, negative energies, maybe we've been abused our whole lives, and we see the world as not a safe place. That's our experience. So when you meet a mean person, hateful person, they came by it honestly. So delusion's not your fault. You just don't see it. One of my Dharma teachers I sat with years ago, he used to say, you're not your fault. He actually was a comedian before he was a Dharma teacher. His name is Ness Whisker. If Nisker, if you ever can find a talk by him, it's hilarious. So until we're enlightened, full enlightenment or momentary, we all experience momentary enlightenment, where we're really seeing things clearly, where we identify, even when we identify a difficult emotion, there's a solace there. There's now a kind of a healing moment of being with the truth, and not kind of being divorced from our truth and separated within our own self, So on a large scale, groups, even whole nations, like I said, become delusional, where evil actions are justified. And we're seeing that now in our world, Killing and destruction can be considered the right thing to do for whatever delusional reason. And then I'm just going to briefly touch on conspiracy theories. I just had to, as part of the delusion talk, I had to go and look. So in 2021, Newsweek did a story on the most egregious, conspiracy theories of 2021. And that was a dark black hole I went into. Like, I got out, I'm here. But one of them was that thousands of people believe that the Rolling Stones guitarist, maybe you guys have heard this, Keith Richards, is actually JFK. And JFK Jr. was going to come to this big concert in Texas, and he was going to corroborate, yes, that is my dad. Now, JFK Jr. has been dead for a couple decades, so he didn't show up. But even after the concert, they believed Keith Richards still was JFK. That's how deep delusion can run. And another one was that humans lived on Mars at one time, but rendered it uninhabitable following a nuclear war and total destruction. But at one point, humans lived on Mars. People believe that. It went viral. I don't know. It's interesting. It's delusion at work. So Stephen Levine, let's get back to Buddhism. Insight meditation helps us acknowledge the conditioning and to confront the blind spots. He says the key is to allow space for not knowing. Space for not knowing. He says, very seldom do we have the wisdom not to know, to lay the mind open to deeper understanding. Confusion arises because we fight against our not knowing, okay? Which experiences each moment fresh without preconceptions or expectations. So when we admit and when we get real with not knowing, we're now without preconceptions and expectations. Okay, we are so full of ways of seeing and ideas of how things should be, we leave no room for wisdom to arise. So befriending not knowing is a big part of seeing into our delusion. Not saying, I've got to decide it's this or that, So how do we see what's hard to see? We're on step 2 now. Meditation, of course, you knew that was coming, right? So waking up from the dream-like existence, turning off the automatic pilot as much as we can by training the mind. We cultivate discernment, non-judgmental awareness, and non-preferential awareness. That's wisdom. So last week, Larry talked about the 10 paramis, the 10 perfections, and he focused on patience. Well, 3 of the 10 are antidotes to the 3 defilements. So greed, the antidote is generosity, which is the first parami. We cultivate generosity to root out greed. Loving kindness is one of the 10 paramis, and that roots out hatred. And wisdom is one of the paramis, often referred to as discernment, interchangeable. Discernment, wisdom, insight. One of the paramis, and that uproots delusion. So the techniques, so noting, like we did with meditation tonight, the moment that we note our direct experience, in, out with the breath, in, out. When we're fully 100% with one breath, we get a pure experience of freedom, of being free of the kind of the tyranny of constant papancha, it's called thinking. Okay. So noting helps us pay attention each moment, sound, thinking. Another one is using this little phrase that Ajahn Sumedho recommends. This moment is like this. This moment is like this. You can hone it down to like this. It's like this, this, this. And each moment you're trying to get a real clear, this moment, whatever it is, a clear hit, it's like this. Bu do, bu do, bu do. This is Ajahn Chah would encourage the monks to use that. If you've never tried it, bu do, as a mantra, you can try it. It does really bring you in. I like it. I use it sometimes. And another is body scan, just your direct experience from tip to toes of your body. You're not leaving yourself open to get lost in thought. You're directly experiencing all those places in your body, sensation, you can relax them. You're there. Okay, you're present. Nature. Has anybody noticed the outdoors recently? Like things in bloom and stuff? Like, wow. So go walking around in nature and really being really present with what's in front of you. So learning to be present with direct observation practices. We strengthen our concentration and see the process of thoughts and feelings without getting caught in the story. It's the process, not the content. We can see the thoughts and we can learn to let them go when we're present. Otherwise, if we're not present, we become. So on my vacation in January, I just wasn't going to get lost in thought. I really wanted to be in continuous mindfulness as much as I could. I wanted to be present for all the experience, the places where I was overseas. So suddenly I just started using this mantra, don't think. And I would be doing my thing, and all of a sudden I'd realize that I was getting involved in some chain, and I go, don't think. And I really learned how to drop it, let it go, drop it. And it was real, I'm still using it some now. It was really helpful. So I'm going back to Stephen Levine, and now I have to give him a plug. The late Stephen Levine, I should say. Wonderful, Gradual Awakening. Fabulous book. So he says, during the day, if we acknowledge the fear and the darkness, we cut through it. Each time we acknowledge a state of mind without judgment, just noting there's insecurity or there's fear, or, well, look at that restlessness. It weakens the state of mind while strengthening the ability to let it go. This is why the technique of noting is so helpful. Joseph again, Goldstein. Every time we become aware of a thought, as opposed to being lost in a thought, we experience that opening of mind. Every time we become aware of a thought, as opposed to being lost in the thought, we experience that opening of mind. And Stephen again, as the negative states weaken, the positive states arise often by themselves. Such terms as negative and positive, or unwholesome and wholesome, are not meant judgmentally. Rather, they indicate those states that block the light of understanding and those which focus it. We easily recognize negative states. They're uncomfortable. We can feel it in the body. Okay? What does it feel like to be angry or jealous or envious? It feels tight and anxious. There's a burning. What does it feel like to be generous, open, kind, loving? It feels warm and spacious. It feels very comfortable. So in conclusion, we practice insight meditation to arrive at more clear seeing, to wake up our discernment, to see through the filter of our preconceived ideas of what's true and what's habitual, waking up to determine our course versus living on automatic pilot is possible. As delusional thinking is under the spotlight of mindfulness, old ways of thinking and being start to fall away. We're tasting more and more freedom, and less suffering is the result. So thank you so much for listening and for giving me a reason to dive deeper into delusion, because it was a journey that it was a good journey for me to put the spotlight. Thank you.